stop believing and assuming that the planets are physical bodies. Fake X, SpaceX, did not crash anything into the moon. You are believing AI CGI imagery. Rockets cannot physically crash anything into plasma. And one of the biggest assumptions built into our modern cosmology is that the things that we call so-called planets must necessarily be physical worlds, solid objects, floating through an enormous vacuum of space that's capable of being landed on, just like planet Earth in the heliocentric explanation. But before we accept that premise, you should ask a much bigger question that's much more simpler. What are you actually observing? The traditional word for planet is actually luminary, something that gives or emits light. And the ancient description of the planets was not simply worlds or physical worlds. They were called wandering stars, because unlike the fixed stars, but still yet similar to the stars, these luminous points appeared to wander through the zodiac belt along their distinctive trajectories. And that observation is still there today. Nothing has changed. Look at Mercury. Look at Venus. Look at Mars. Look at Jupiter. Look at Saturn. And even Grok tells you it's all space engine simulations and not telescope footage when you see these smoother type of videos of the so-called planets that kind of look real but can only be done by using simulation software that uses orbital data. It's not authentic. Look at Uranus. Look at Neptune. Look at Pluto. That's all CGI renderings. People ask, how come Earth is flat but all the planets are round? Well, smarty pants, they're actually not. If you actually zoom into these with P1000 cameras, what you're looking at is oscillatory, pulsating, reciprocating, helical, breathing vortex torus energies that are expanding and contracting as attenuated transcendental plasma toroidal phenomena structures, each one appearing to be a luminous point that is tracing its own characteristic path. The orbs above us were known as gods by the Romans and the Greeks. It was understood that each of these orbs had certain vibrations of frequency that had effects on the consciousness of human beings and the human mind connected to the chakra system. What we call a so-called planet is not necessarily a giant physical sphere sitting somewhere in three-dimensional space, but again, it's a luminary, a localized plasma node, a manifestation within a larger energetic field, a point of concentrated electromagnetic ethereal activity, something that has a recognizable trajectory, periodicity, brightness, color, and relationship to the other luminaries, without necessarily being a physical terrestrial object. And this is where I think intuition and observation deserve to meet each other. Because when you say, quote, it's a physical planet, quote unquote, it doesn't actually prove that you've demonstrated its physical nature. It means that you have adopted an interpretation of the observations. We see a luminous manifestation. We measure its apparent movement. We calculate its periodicity. We observe its phases, brightness, changes, conjunctions, oppositions, retrograde motions, and relationships to the zodiac. But then you go ahead and make an enormous conceptual leap and you assume that therefore it must be a physical ball. That's the assumption you need to challenge. And here's the provocative part. Maybe the reason we haven't found the physical surface of these objects is because there is not a physical surface there to land on in the first place. Even here, NASA posts a picture of Mars online and the literal rat mouse appears on the picture. Yeah, okay, NASA. And do you remember when a giant gnatfly showed up on Mars on the rover? Rather than treating the names of planets, which are actually wandering stars, as automatically synonymous with physical worlds, don't forget that they represent observable luminous phenomena within a structured celestial field. The planets are not places, they are phenomena, they are nodes, they are wandering luminaries, wandering lights, and their apparent individuality comes from the unique trajectories that they trace through the firmament. This doesn't mean that every measurement made by astronomy is meaningless. It's actually quite the opposite. The measurements are incredibly useful. The question is what those measurements actually demonstrate. A telescope can resolve more detail in a luminous object, but increasing magnification doesn't automatically establish the philosophical nature of what you're looking at. You can measure a phenomena extremely precisely without necessarily knowing what its underlying substance is. So perhaps the real question is not how big is this planet, but perhaps the deeper question is what exactly is the thing producing the appearance of what we call a planet? If the planets are fundamentally luminaries, manifestations of light, plasma, dielectric and magnetic organization within a larger celestial field, then their wandering isn't the movement of physical balls through an empty vacuum. It is the movement of energy patterns and luminous nodal points through the field itself. And that gives an entirely different meaning to the ancient phrase of wandering stars. Not worlds wandering through space, but lights wandering through the firmament projected by the black sun's central vortex.